Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. So I took a little bit of an extra New Year's break there, but now I'm back in business. And what we're going to do today is walk through the top 10 of the box office for the weekend of January 20th through the 22nd. Walk through the top 10, then do a couple deep dives in the big new openers this weekend. Let's get started. Number one this weekend, and these are the current estimates as of Sunday, 4:20 p.m. Central Time. Number one was Split this weekend with $40.2 million. That was on about 3,000 screens. So its per theater average was just around $13,200. This is a big surprise. I think everybody thought from the marketing campaign, there seemed to be a lot of buzz with Split. Obviously, it has M. Night Shyamalan attached to it, so that also builds in another layer to the hype. But I don't think anybody expected to even approach $40 million. I didn't get a chance to look at a lot of the estimates or predictions from last week for this film, but I was probably thinking in the mid-20s, and that would have been great, I think, for a January opening. The New Year's sort of doldrums have sort of worn off a bit here. People are done taking vacation. They've gotten back into the groove of things. So the box office tends to sort of recover a little bit later in January. But a $40 million open in January is kind of abnormal. So something really clicked about this film. I think the marketing, the trailer, just really told a fascinating story that hooked people in right away. Very, very well done marketing campaign for Split. That $13,000 per theater average, that's kind of outrageous when you think about it in January. So I'm sure M. Night Shyamalan is very happy with this, and Universal is as well. I kind of wonder what the staying power is on this. The critical reaction to it seemed pretty good. Got a 76% on Rotten Tomato. That's great for a horror film. Audience score was 83%, which is pretty good. Not like, oh, it's the best movie ever. It's most people enjoyed it. So I think it could stick around for a while. But I mean, the opening's just really, really great for this film, and a very big surprise. And the biggest part of the surprise is that it beat out the number 2 film, XXX, The Return of Xander Cage. Everybody thought this was going to be the number 1 film of the weekend. Vin Diesel's back, a sequel to the 2002 film XXX. It was 2002. Wow, is that a long time ago? That's 15 years ago now. What a long time to do a sequel. And this doesn't seem to be working very well, these long periods between sequels. Like Zoolander 2 fell flat on its face. It's just like, I don't know, they just waited too long to do it. And it seems like that might have been the case here with XXX, The Return of Xander Cage. People expected this to open definitely higher than what it did. It was only at $20 million for the weekend on a ton of screens too. 3,650 screens. Its per theater average was only $5,500. That's well below half of what Split did. So this was essentially a knockout punch that Split gave to XXX, and Paramount Films, who put out this new XXX film. I don't really know much about the plot of this film. I do know that the critics savaged it, 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score was 57%, which is not good at all. If you're getting a 57% score on Rotten Tomatoes audience score, you are doing some terrible things. Now, the cinema score, I believe, on XXX was an A-, and that just goes to show you, and Split's score was B+. Something's off with cinema score. It's been around since the 70s. I've ranted about cinema score multiple times on this show. Something doesn't fit. Like, if Split scores a B+ on cinema score, and yet scores in the 80s on the Rotten Tomato audience score, then you would think that if XXX scored a higher cinema score, it would be in the same range, like 80s, maybe even 90s on the Rotten Tomato audience score. But the reality is XXX scored an A- on cinema score and ended up in the 50s on Rotten Tomato audience score. So there's something really off with it. I don't know how much I can trust it anymore. This is like the second time this has come up. It also came up with a Ouija 2 this last Halloween, where the cinema score just didn't make any sense whatsoever. So hopefully they figure it out and start measuring in a different way. I'll keep talking about it just because I think it's interesting. Because you do find some patterns, like Hidden Figures, the breakout success of the new year so far, got an A+ on cinema score, and I could have told you that before it even opened. Like, the way people were responding to it was just so over the top with praise that it had A+ cinema score written all over it. But in any event, people didn't really like Triple X that much. The critics hated it, and it performed pretty poorly overall. And we'll do a deeper dive on Split and Triple X later in the show. I kind of want to get through the top 10 first here. And speaking of Hidden Figures, in number 3, Hidden Figures with $16.2 million, only a 22% drop from last weekend, playing on a lot of screens, 3,416 screens right now. Per theater average is about $4,750. It's in its 5th weekend. Its cumulative total so far is $84 million. This was a fascinating movie, and I think it is the story so far of the new year. It was a movie that could have been a lot smaller than it is. And what I mean by that is it could have been an art house film. It could have been released as limited and kept it limited and maybe try and get some Oscar buzz, kind of like a Manchester by the Sea or a Fences or a Moonlight or something like that. But Fox had different plans for this film. They created a marketing campaign that was essentially a deluge. I saw more marketing for Hidden Figures over the last 3 months than I think than any other film out there. And it was kind of an asymmetrical marketing campaign. They did TV spots and trailers, but they showed up everywhere, a lot of talk show stuff. It just seemed like anywhere that you could connect with a film, they had an ad up. So Fox did a fantastic job marketing this film. $84 million so far. I don't see this going anywhere. The thing is, the Oscar nominations they got to be coming out maybe even tomorrow. Maybe they're already out. They got to be coming out super soon. I don't know how much it's going to get nominated. The voting stopped a while ago. So the kind of buzz and hype that it's going through now may not translate over to awards, but it doesn't really matter at this point. It's already making a huge chunk of change for Fox, and I think they're going to be super happy with it. And I don't see it dropping that much moving forward. That 22% drop is great, and I think it might keep sticking around that like sub 30 drops, which you're talking about 5th or 6th weekend, and it's not dropping a lot of theaters. Really fantastic performance by Hidden Figures. Number 4 this weekend, Sing came in at $9 million, decent 36% drop, starting to drop theaters a little bit more, dropped about 500 theaters. Its per theater average is now below 3,000 per theater at 2,800 per theater. Cumulative so far is $250 million. Fantastic performance for Sing. I think Universal's going to be over the moon about this. They couldn't really expect it to do that much more than this. And that was number 4. Number 5 this weekend at the box office is La La Land, a movie I've talked about a lot in the show. Another breakout success of the holiday winter season here. It's a Lionsgate film. It's a musical. It's an homage to old Hollywood. It is only on 1,800 screens right now. I would think they would push it even higher, and it's adding a little. It only added 17 screens this weekend. I thought they would push it more, like get it over 2,000. Hell, get it to 3,000 theaters if you can. Its cachet is only going to go up when these Oscar nominations come out. It won all the Golden Globes, 7 Golden Globes. There was a skit about it last night on SNL about how could you possibly not love this movie. So it's in everybody's minds right now. I would have pushed it out to a lot more theaters, but it is starting to drop off a little bit here in terms of its percentage. 42% drop from this weekend to last, even with adding a few screens. Its per theater average is just around $4,500 per theater. Its total take so far is $89 million. I feel like this one, once these awards hit again, it's gonna sort of expand out to Middle America a little bit more, and it's gonna keep trucking. So it's gonna do well over $100 million. Not really sure what the limit is to it. It'll be interesting to see what will do better, La La Land or Hidden Figures. I guess Hidden Figures is going to crush it at the end of the day when I'm looking at it. But you wouldn't have said that. Like, you wouldn't have said, like, Hidden Figures. If you told me back in December 9th or whatever, whenever La La Land opened, that Hidden Figures was going to do better than that, I'd be like, absolutely not. Both have way overperformed their expectations, but Hidden Figures is basically a breakaway success. But great stuff for La La Land. I expect those drops to stay below 50% here on out. It might even go below 40% with these award nominations coming out here pretty soon. So La La Land was number 5 this weekend. Number 6 this weekend was Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, $7 million. This one's starting to taper off a lot, 47% drop, because it lost about 560 screens this weekend. It's still on 2,600 screens, so it's not just at the budget theaters yet. Per theater average is getting kind of low, $2,700 per theater. Total take so far for Rogue One is $512 million. Huge success all around. I've talked about Rogue One a lot. I think, when you look back on it a little bit, Star Wars Force Awakens did about $950 million domestically. Rogue One just wasn't in that caliber, and I made the mistake of thinking that it was. When I did my projections and I was thinking about this movie, it's like, it's like obviously just another Star Wars movie. Everybody's going to want to see it. That's not necessarily the case. $500 million is nothing to balk at. Like, I think that makes it the number 1 movie of 2016. But I get the feeling that maybe some of the industry people and maybe Disney thought it might do higher, like 600, 700. And maybe it'll get there, but it's starting to taper off pretty quickly here. So I think it's a win that Rogue One did this well. It kind of proves that you can do these side movies within the main narrative of the Star Wars films, but they're not going to make the same money. And I think that Disney just comes to terms with that. Maybe spend a lot less on marketing next time, just because you don't need to market a Star Wars movie that much. Like, everybody knows what it is and it's coming out. I think they really tapped that. They tapped the demos for this film really well. No one else is going to see it now. Like, they got everybody who might have seen it. They went to go see this film. So you're talking, $500-600 million now is what these films can do, and that's what they should expect moving forward. Number 7 was Monster Trucks. This is a huge write-off loss, over $100 million loss for Paramount. Only did $7 million this weekend, and its second weekend, not a terrible drop, 36% drop. That's not awful. Per theater average is about $2,300. It has only made $22 million so far. Its budget was outrageous. I think they wrote off this film before they even released it, just because they knew it was such a absolutely shit idea. And it will disappear very quickly from the screens. But I get the feeling it might come back in like 10, 15, 20 years as like a cult film, just because it's so astronomically stupid. But who knows? It may just become totally forgotten forever. So that was number 7, Monster Trucks. Number 8 was Patriots Day. This is the Mark Wahlberg, Peter Berg film about the Boston Marathon bombing. The second time they've teamed up this sort of fall holiday season. They also did Deepwater Horizon, which I think came out in September. That did not do well. They spent a ton of money on that production. I think $140 million, but they had like a $30 million write-off, so they listed the production budget as $110 million. Not gonna make that back. And Patriots Day is a much smaller film, only a $45 million budget. But I thought this was gonna do a lot better than it's doing right now. And I'm intrigued as to why it has failed like it has. So it's in its 5th weekend. It did some limited release. It only made $6 million this weekend, and that's about a 50% drop without dropping any screens. It's still on about 3,100 screens. Its per theater average is below 2,000 now. Like, that's shit. That's bad. I think they just miscalculated a bit. It's made 23 million so far. Are you going to play this movie outside the United States? Probably not going to make a lot internationally. So I think Lionsgate, I don't know what happened. Like maybe they gave Peter Berg like a 2-picture deal. Like you got to do Deepwater and Patriots Day together or something. I don't know why they packaged them or filmed them so closely together and released them so closely together. But it's not good. It's not good for Patriots Day. This is the second sort of flop for Mark Wahlberg, unfortunately, and Berg. So I don't know what's going to go on with those guys. I mean, obviously they work constantly and they always have different projects going on. But what Deepwater and Patriots Day say to me is that Berg cannot necessarily be trusted with a huge budget anymore. He's not going to get blank checks. He failed twice now. Like he failed to really make a hit out of both of these movies. And honestly, like they're not like the most interesting topics for films. Like Deepwater Horizon, everybody remembers it happened, but like who wants to see a movie about it? Like Deepwater Horizon, I went to go see it opening day. I don't know why, because I was just so intrigued by the production budget and how they could spend that much money on a film like this. It's a really well shot movie. It's not really that well written. The acting was decent, but it felt like a 2-hour 140, to be honest, $1 million like Discovery Channel show. Like it could have been just like an hour documentary on the Discovery Channel and be like, oh, that's cool. Like it had the same level of I don't know, like the same vibe as one of those shows you'd watch on a Sunday afternoon where you're just kind of bored, not doing anything. So kind of not the greatest topic to tackle for a $140 million blockbuster it was supposed to be. Patriots Day, obviously a lot smaller. But why are you making a movie about the Boston Marathon bombing? It was what, like 3-4 years ago? And the way that it was covered, like everybody knows all of the details because it was on news 24 hours a day for like 3 months. So it just seems like really soon, like maybe in 30 years, you can make a movie about it when younger people have no idea about the marathon bombing. And you kind of want to like have people remember and sort of teach a lesson about that moment in history, but like it's way too recent. And same thing with Deepwater. It wasn't even that long ago. In any event, Berg and Wahlberg strike out number 2 here with Patriots Day. Definitely thought it was going to do a lot better than this, but it is not. So that was number 8 this weekend. Number 9, kind of another strikeout here on something that I thought would do well. The Founder, and this is the biopic of the not necessarily the founder of McDonald's, but the guy who basically brought McDonald's to all of America and made them super, super powerful and, billionaires or whatever. So Michael Keaton was a lead on this. This had a weird production schedule, or some stories were going on about it. Like it maybe wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. Robert Siegel was the writer. Director was John Lee Hancock. It's kind of an art film. He did Saving Mr. Banks. He did The Blind Side, was his big one. So you definitely have some clout here with Michael Keaton and John Lee Hancock. And the story, everybody knows McDonald's. I mean, it's like the most famous restaurant, or popular restaurant in the United States, and has been for 40 years now, or at least 30 years. And so this one seemed like it was an art house play, but they didn't really know what to do with it because it was originally supposed to come out, I want to say last August. I was like, why would you release an art film like this that is so clearly going after Oscars in like the middle of August? I want to say it was almost scheduled to be released the same weekend as Suicide Squad or like Sausage Party, one of those weekends. It was so strange to me that they would do that. It just didn't really add up. And The Founder this weekend on its opening weekend, did $3.8 million on about 1,000 screens. Its per theater average was $3,400. Not bad at all. But not great for a movie that you want to build a lot of buzz about. Basically, they shoved it out to 1,000 screens. Everybody who wanted to see it saw it this weekend. Most people aren't going to go next weekend or the third weekend for this film. I think it's going to drop off pretty rapidly here and disappear from most people's minds. Unless Michael Keaton gets a Best Actor nomination at the Oscars, I don't see this sort of making a ton of money. Now the production budget probably wasn't very high, but it just seems like the Weinstein Company screwed this up. They really screwed the pooch on this one. I hate that term, screw the pooch. That's a stupid term. They really fucked up is what they did. And they could have released it last August. That would have been a terrible idea. This feels like an October release, like a Social Network type slot, like a Gone Girl. Like, put it out in October and see if it connects with people. And then, you know, by the time January comes around, the awards come out, you get a second wave of stuff maybe in VOD. They pushed it out way too late. You know what? I wonder if it's even eligible for Oscar stuff. Maybe it's not, because it is getting released pretty late here at the start of 2017. I don't know. I'll have to check into that. In any event, Founder did not do very well. It's probably going to disappear. Who knows if it's a great movie? I think most critics liked it. 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences liked it. 83% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. No cinema score on it for whatever reason. Because apparently they don't do all movies whenever, even if it's a wide release, they don't do it sometimes. But you know, the Founders, it's getting drowned out by stuff like Hidden Figures and La La Land. Like, those are sort of the more like arty films that are connecting with people, or smaller films that are connecting with people. And the Founder, I think, just got lost in the shuffle. So that was number 9. Number 10 was Sleepless. I don't know anything about this movie. Jamie Foxx. How do I not know about this? Got released, looks like last weekend. This weekend, Sleepless did only 3.7 million. Huge 55% drop. Okay, that's kind of outrageous. 55% drop on your second weekend is not a disaster. The next film I want to talk about, it was a disaster, their drop. 55% is okay. It basically means it's like, people weren't that stoked about seeing it. There just wasn't a big audience for this. Its per theater average is only $2,000 this weekend. It's currently sitting at 15 million total. I don't know what they expected this thing to do. It's Open Road Films, who, you know, they release all this weird shit, to be honest with you. Bleed for This was their last one, which was a total disaster. Max Steel, total disaster. Snowden they put out last September. 999 was pretty cool. But they also put out like the 50 Shades of Black. Remember that? Not a company that, but they also did Spotlight, the best picture of last year. So they're a studio that doesn't really seem to have a focus or a good production process or distribution process in place to select the right films to distribute or produce. They're all over the place. Some of their films are, you know, Oscar winners. Some of them are one of the worst. Rock the Kashba was one of the worst wide releases ever. So it was like Max Steel, I think, too. This is just awful. And so Sleepless continues their little awful streak here. I don't know what they're trying to prove or trying to achieve, but I don't think they're doing it. Jamie Foxx. When's the last time Jamie Foxx had a hit? I'm probably gonna look like an idiot because it's probably gonna be a huge movie. Annie in 2014, basically the last Christmas, Christmas of 2014. That was kind of a hit. He was in Horrible Bosses 2 for a little bit. Amazing Spider-Man 2. I guess White House Down was his last sort of big lead starring role. They only did 73 million. Django Unchained was his last like real breakout role. That's not really a breakout. His last like great role where if you saw it, you're like, that was amazing. Because everybody loves Django Unchained. What a great film. In any event, not a great performance here by Sleepless. I don't even see it on. Oh yeah, here's the Rotten Tomatoes. 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. Basically nobody reviewed it. It only has 27 total reviews. Normally a big film's going to have like, 200 reviews or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences despised it, 52%. So just a total whiff here. I think this reeks of a film that was hastily put together. Production budget probably wasn't huge. But the pieces just weren't all there, and for some reason, no one just shut it down. It's like, this is a dumb idea. Like, this isn't going to go anywhere. And they kept following through with it, and then the end result is this terrible film that's going to make no money. So Sleepless was number 10 with $3.7 million. The stuff outside the top 10 that I'll mention. I could probably talk about the whole top 50 to be honest with you, but I won't do that. The Bye Bye Man, which overperformed last weekend, did pretty well. This weekend with Split coming out, had a massive, horrific drop of 73%. I'll have to look and see if it's like top 10 all-time drops, but that's terrible. People hated the film. It's one of those things where the trailer was good enough so that I got horror buffs. I was kind of intrigued by it because I'm a big horror movie fan. But once people saw it, terrible Rotten Tomato score, audience score, cinema score, people absolutely did not like the Bye Bye Man. So that will disappear off the face of the earth in the next couple of weeks. Moana's still sticking around, 236 million. That's interesting though when you look at that. Moana has done worse than Sing. And Sing seemed like a pretty cheap, kind of dumb kids movie. But it's at $250 million. Moana's only at 236. I thought it was going to do a lot more than that. But it's sort of sticking around. Moana's been out for 9 weeks now, and it's still making 2.5 million. Still has a per theater of about 2,000. Which its per theater average beat Patriots Day, if that gives you any indication of how bad Patriots Day is doing. Passengers still sticking around too. Although I think it's definitely Passengers underperformed overall. It's kind of a sigh of relief from Sony. Although last week, big news about Sony, and I kind of saw this coming ever since The Hack. Sony's trying to sell off its film division because honestly, it's probably so unprofitable. They've had so many misses over the last couple of years. And it really was ever since the interview debacle where they got hacked, the studio basically imploded. And I really looked at something like Ghostbusters last year with a great film series to sort of tap into. Should have been a ton of hype, should have been a huge blockbuster, and they really, if you put all the misogynist neo-Nazi alt-right bullshit that happened with it, it still was a really poor movie and poor execution across the board on that. That was kind of the canary in the coal mine to me, that Sony was probably on its way out with its film division. Who knows if they'll find a buyer, but in any event, Passengers was one of their last films here, and it kind of underperformed, so it kind of makes sense that they're looking to sell the whole studio. Anything else that kind of piques my interest? 20th Century Women, that's kind of an award pedigree film, art film from A24. It's performing all right. It's crazy, like this 20th Century Women has gotten really stellar reviews, and Annette Bening has gotten glowing reviews for her performance in it, but it just didn't connect with anybody on the art house film sort of circuit. Like, nobody's really talking about it that much. The only people I've heard talk about 20th Century Women are critics, and they love it, but the general population, and especially like even the art house film people and across the country, just did not go see this. And that's mostly it. Nothing really else that pops up on here. If you take a look at the big stories of the weekend are Split way overperforming, Triple X underperforming, and Hidden Figures, La La Land crushing it as kind of smaller films that sort of broke out of the art house small film world and really crossed over into general audiences. Now, I wanted to do kind of a brief deep dive on Split and kind of like contextualize its performance. So Split did $40 million this weekend. That was way over what anybody thought it would do. I think it's kind of like a good opportunity to talk about M. Night Shyamalan and what he's done in his sort of career, because it's been a topsy-turvy roller coaster career for somebody who started out so strong. M. Night Shyamalan released his first major film in August of 1999 with The Sixth Sense, and I consider it to be a masterpiece. Even if you throw out the whole twist part of the film, which, M. Night Shyamalan has now become famous for his twists, you go back and watch that film. It's been on pay cable here for the last 3 months or so. It is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of horror. It's just one of the best thrillers, kind of like psychological thrillers that I think has come out in the last 30, 40 years. And so you definitely could see why he was being compared to someone like Alfred Hitchcock. I kind of see him more connected to Spielberg. This is his command of the camera and the way that he can pull emotions out of single scenes, and that, without even the actor doing anything. He had such an active camera and lens that he was able to paint any sort of picture that he wanted to. And the thing with Split is I think you can officially say it is return to form for him. I haven't seen the film, but the critics have really loved it and liked it a lot. Getting a 70% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes for a horror film like this, and a smaller horror film like that about someone with split identity, it seems like kind of a cheap horror film. The fact that it's getting such good reviews just it indicates there's some level of quality there. And this is a continuation on of his sort of the first hints that he was coming back with The Visit last September of 2015. That opened at $25 million and took home 65. And it's gotten a really good reputation too. Like, I haven't seen The Visit, I've seen parts of it, but from what I've heard from people that I know that are really into horror, they really liked it, and the critics had a good reception to it. But before all that, he was even in a better spot where, Sixth Sense, and then that went into Unbreakable in 2000. We'll go back to Sixth Sense, masterpiece of film, masterpiece of horror, thriller, what do you want to call it. It opened up at $26 million, closed at $300 million, and this is back in 1999. So you do inflation, it's going to go way over $300 million. A huge, massive sleeper hit. And then he came back only about a year later, Thanksgiving 2000, with Unbreakable. Opened at 30. You would expect Unbreakable to open a lot higher than that based on the past performance of Sixth Sense. Closed at under $100 million. I think a really big disappointment. And that film, going back on that film too, that one's another one where I feel like the quality of it is just missed with the fact that M. Night Shyamalan has kind of screwed up his career in the middle of it here with doing a lot of shitty films. But go back and watch Unbreakable. It's a great movie, and more than anything, it's filled with great scenes. I think to like one of the opening scenes where Bruce Willis is laying on the doctor's table, and the doctor's talking to him, was like, "Were you alone?" Obviously, if you haven't seen the movie, he gets involved in a train crash, and he's the only survivor. But in this scene, there's another survivor on the hospital bed next to him, and the way M. Night Shyamalan frames this scene as the doctor is telling him that, you are one of the only people alive. The other guy is right there, and you literally see him sort of out of focus. The other patients start bleeding out and flatlining. One of my favorite scenes, maybe ever, I guess. But he has such a command with the camera and showed such promise. And then Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and then 2 years later, M. Night Shyamalan comes back with Signs, which is another huge hit for him. Opened at $60 million. This is the Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix alien film. Or maybe they're not aliens, maybe they're demons. All of these stupid theories that are going around. Although I think he did say that they were demons somewhere in some interview. I don't know. He likes to leave stuff open to interpretation. Anyway, Signs did great in August 2002, ended up about $230 million. That's another film that I think, looking back on it, is a lot better than people gave it credit for back then. But I will say that with Signs was the first moment when it felt like M. Night Shyamalan was sort of playing with the emotions of its audience too much. It felt like he was being manipulative, especially with that ending. It just felt kind of out of place. It felt kind of sudden, almost an Ex Machina situation. And it's sort of like, I feel like the first 90% of that film is almost a classic. And the last 10% you're like, wow, what the hell was that? Water? Really? Like, what? Why would they invade a planet filled with, like, the air's like 70%? I don't know. In any event, it was a successful film, but it burned people a little bit with that ending. And his next film, 2 years later, in July of 2004, The Village, Opened at $50 million, great opening, but closed at $114 million. You know, over $100 million off of Signs 2 years before. People did not respond well to that film at all. The way that it was marketed and the way that it was sold kept the real big twist under wraps, but when people found out the twist, it was like, oh, dude, we get it now. Like, we see it coming from a mile away. What are you doing? But again, with all these films, Sixth Sense through The Village, if you go back and rewatch them, and obviously I'm kind of, biased with him. I've always loved his films. I saw all of these films opening weekend. The Village is the first one that I saw of his that I absolutely fucking hated. Like, I hated this film when I walked out of it. I'm pretty sure I saw it in Minneapolis with a group of friends that lived up there, and I just walked out just furious at the twist at the end, because it was such a good film up until the later half, or the later, just like kind of Signs, the last 10%. You're like, what the hell happened? It felt like he just blew the whole thing. But looking back on The Village, and again, all these films have been on sort of constantly on pay cable. The Village is a great film, and the twist in it actually works when you look at it now, and going back and rewatching it. It felt very cheap in the moment when it came out, but when I watched it recently, it for some reason, that jarring change at the end of the film in terms of the time period holds up really well for some reason, and it actually kind of fits with the bigger themes of the film, and it doesn't feel cheap anymore. And I think, I don't know, I wonder if his other films, maybe not, perhaps not, will have a similar sort of renaissance in terms of their artistic quality. But Sixth Sense all the way through The Village, I think, are all great films. And then he starts to go off the deep end with Lady in the Water in 2006. Saw that opening weekend. That only opened at 18 million, closed at 42 million. His worst performing film to date. Huge flop. They expected it to do so much better than that. And the film itself and the quality of it, it's basically an incoherent mess. And I've only seen it once, maybe caught it once or twice on TV after that. But this is where M. Night Shyamalan's career kind of goes off the cliff, and it's basically his tombstone is then put in place with The Happening in 2008. With the trailers to that, everybody was like super stoked. It was like, oh, okay, all right, he sort of figured it out. We gave him a break with the ending of The Village. Okay, he screwed up with Lady in the Water. It was a total mess. All right, he's going to come back with The Happening, and it's going to be awesome. Mark Wahlberg, Zooey Deschanel. It looks like a really fascinating movie, and the trailers were pitch perfect. It turned out to be just an awful film across the board. It started out really strong, but half hour in, it just goes off the rails in a way that's much worse than Lady in the Water. I think The Happening is an atrocious film, and so in the period of about 8-9 years, he goes from The Sixth Sense and released a lot of films and gets to The Happening. You're like, what the fuck happened to him? It's almost like he completely lost his touch. But looking back on it, still you realize that M. Night Shyamalan is great behind the camera. He is not a great writer, not a great editor. I don't even know if he's a good producer, but get him behind the camera and he can tell a story with a single shot like almost nobody else can. But nothing ever lined up, and his career just got worse and worse. Last Airbender, 2010, did $131 million, $40 million opening, but a huge disappointment. And then you have stuff like After Earth, which opened at $27 million and ended at $60 million. That was a total, complete shit show as well. And then finally he turns it around. And I think what ended up happening with M. Night Shyamalan is they kept on giving him blank checks. Because when you start with a movie and a masterpiece like The Sixth Sense, it's like you can do no wrong, and you're going to be surrounded by yes men. And that continued on to Lady in the Water, I think. And he kept getting the okay to do these films. It's sad because there's so many great artists and directors out there that can never get a single chance, and he got a a lot of chances, and he screwed up most of them after The Sixth Sense. You know, Lady in the Water was kind of a dead end. Happening, awful. Airbender, awful. After Earth, awful. He had 4 terrible movies in a row, and they finally gave him the go ahead to get back in the saddle with something with a micro budget of The Visit. And he turned it into gold a little bit. He turned it into a profit. He sort of had to reboot and restart his entire career, essentially. And now Split, the way it's performing this weekend with $40 million, it's probably going to easily break, you would hope, get over $100 million there. It's a horror film, so the multipliers are usually a little lower than 3. But audiences seem to like it, so it should break $100 million. He hasn't had a $100 million film since The Last Airbender. And in reality, that had a built-in audience. So it wasn't original content. His last really original film that made $100 million was The Village. That was 13 years ago. So, he's back. He's back, and we'll see how much capital and clout the performance of Split will get him. Like, is he going to be able to do another big film like The Signs sometime soon? I doubt it. I think he needs to do like 1 or 2 more of these sort of mid-tier films that does very well, and then they'll probably give him the reins again and say, hey, you know what, you want to make another crazy comic book movie that's really not a comic book movie, like Unbreakable? Go for it. Here's $100 million. But he sort of he used up a lot of his goodwill over his career, and so I think it's going to take a couple more of these The Visit, The Split type performances to get him back in action with the bigger blockbusters. In any event, I was going to talk about XXX, but I'm kind of running out of steam. The short on XXX was Vin Diesel's not a box office draw. That was going to be my conclusion. Outside the Fast and the Furious, he just cannot get people to come to the theater. What was his last film? He did a terrible one last year, The Last of the Witch Hunter, I believe it was. The Last Witch Hunter came out October 2015. The whole point is Vin Diesel just can't get people to come to the theater. And M. Night Shyamalan is slowly but surely regaining his credibility, which is pretty cool. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. I will be back hopefully later in the week, and we will do projections on the new films coming out this weekend: A Dog's Purpose, Gold, and Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. Thanks for listening. This has been the Wildline Podcast with Dan.